Gentleman yields. Chair recognizes Mr. Moskowitz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, I think two things can be true simultaneously. And I've said this before. I think there were mistakes made in the Afghanistan withdrawal. I do. And I think we should get to the bottom of those mistakes, intelligence failures, because the whole idea is to make sure that they never happen again. That's how, you never want to be a general fighting the last war. You want to know what went wrong so that you don't repeat them. And I am grateful, and the country is grateful for Brian Mast's sacrifice. And I'm grateful to my fellow Floridians, Corey Mills, Tim Walz, Anna Paulina Luna, who all served in different capacities in the military. But I think two things can be true, and here's the second thing that I think is true. The second thing that's true is that I don't question my colleagues' intent, and I don't question the chairman's intent, but perception, the perception which you don't control and I don't control, is that you're doing this 42 days before an election. Not 6 months ago, not 6 months ago, not a year ago. I think what went on in Afghanistan is one of the most important things that we could find out to make sure it doesn't happen again. So then, you know what? Tell the speaker to cancel recess. Let's have more hearings on Afghanistan. Why haven't we had more hearings on Afghanistan? This Congress has had more hearings on gas stoves and refrigerators and ceiling fans and blenders than they've had on Afghanistan. And that's not the chairman's fault, but that's this Congress. Let me tell you what this Congress has spent their time on. We've removed the speaker, which had never happened in American history. We've impeached a cabinet secretary, hadn't happened in 150 years. We tried to remove another speaker, that failed. We've held the attorney general in contempt, and now we want to hold the secretary of state in contempt. But what about solving the actual problems that happen in Afghanistan? We owe that to the Gold Star families. We absolutely owed that to the Gold Star families. But we're doing it 42 days before the election, all of a sudden. And again, I don't question the chairman's intent. The chairman, I think, on Ukraine and Israel has been a voice of reason in his party, in this Congress. But he can't control the perception, and I can't control it either. And people are going to ask themselves, we're leaving here tomorrow. Tomorrow. We're going to pass the CR and go home. And we're having this hearing today. So the story that's going to be told is as Congress goes out the door, leaves for a 5-week recess, they want to hold the Secretary of State in contempt. I don't know what that does for the Gold Star families. Does that make them feel better? No. Making sure there aren't more Gold Star families is what we should be doing. Making sure the mistakes that were made, making sure those don't repeat themselves. But this doesn't do that at all. 6 months ago, we could have done that. 8 months ago, we could have done that. We could have been doing this, quite frankly, bi-weekly, having hearings on Afghanistan. But that's not what the 118th Congress has focused on. It hasn't focused on that. And so, I hope for the sake of our military families and for the next conflict that we are unaware of, that we do get to the failures in Afghanistan and make sure that something like that doesn't happen again. But this isn't it. This isn't it. This is what the American people question about Congress. It's why we have a 17% approval rating, which, by the way, there's room to grow, lots. But they're going to ask that question. They're going to ask all of a sudden, 24 hours before you leave for a 5-week break. Look, I'll stay if we want to have more hearings in Afghanistan. It's more important than my reelection, quite frankly. So if we want to do that, I'll stay. I'll do that. But we're not going to do that. We're going to go home. And then we're going to come back in a lame duck session, right? We're going to leave the 118th Congress, probably never getting to the bottom of all this. And so I think that's disappointing. But I commit myself to work with my colleagues across the aisle to find out what happened in Afghanistan, right? But my colleagues should be aware, whether it's their intent or not, it's 42 days before the election, it's a day before we're leaving, And that's how this will get framed. You can't control that. That's how this will get framed, even if it wasn't your intent. And people will ask, well, if it was so serious, why didn't we do this 6 months ago? I yield back. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.